Hi guys and welcome to today's video. So if you're new here, my name is Katie and I do a range of videos on my channel, from university to beauty to travel, along with other bits and pieces thrown in. So if you are new, please do hit the subscribe button, it would mean the world to me. Today I'm going to discuss what books I've read so far this year. At the beginning of the year, I set myself a Goodreads challenge for the first time. I've never done it before. And I set myself the challenge of reading 30 books in a year, which compared to what some people read doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm quite a slow reader, always have been. And I just wanted to challenge myself to constantly be like having a book on hand and reading in my spare time rather than watching loads and loads and loads of videos that weren't really necessarily about anything in particular. I just wanted to encourage myself to read more in my free time rather than constantly watching Netflix and the like. And I just thought that it would also help improve the speed of my reading as well, because I am an English lit student, so being a relatively slow reader it's not the best combination in the world. But it is currently the 12th of May, so we're almost halfway through the year. So I thought now would be a good time to update you on how many books I have read so far. I can tell you that I'm halfway to my 30 books. Now some of these are books that I've chosen to read and some of them are books that I've read for my degree, but I'm counting all of them. I just wanted to read 30 books. So I'm going to take you through all the books that I've read. Starting with the most recent one is The Help by Catherine Stockett. My mum bought me this big poster for Christmas that's 100 books that you basically should read, and then you get to scratch them off and there's a little picture behind them afterwards. So that's kind of my inspiration at the moment for finding what books to read, and The Help's on there. And I'd watched the movie years ago in history class, maybe in like year 8 or year 9. I just thought it was an important book to read, as it's about a white young girl, she's like 23, 24, who decides she's going to write a book from the perspective of black maids, otherwise known as The Help. And it's really interesting, and it flicks between 3 different people's perspectives. So yeah, the white girl, then you've got 2 black maids, so you have Minnie and Evelyn, and it flickers between their 3 points of view in their day-to-day life and also their life writing this book. And it's just really, really interesting. I think it's a really good historical novel, and it definitely brings light onto the issues surrounding apartheid at that time. Yeah, I just found it really interesting. My window's open so you can hear people outside. It was quite a heavy going book. It was quite long. It took me ages to read, like ages. This is the book I've spent the most time on so far this year because it was really heavy going. But yeah, that was the most recent book I read. I'm kind of going down because I'm starting with the most recent and going down. So after that was Bridget Jones' Baby, which is the 4th book in the Bridget Jones series. I've always loved Bridget Jones, always, and I'd read the first book before, and the first 2 films I must have watched over 100 times each. They're my go-to films. I love them. I've made everyone in my life watch them because they're just incredible, and I just can't express how much I love Bridget Jones. Honestly, the best invention ever. But I'd never read the rest of the books, so I had to read the first one. Like, I reread it for a module I was doing this year, so I thought I'd read the rest of them. So yeah, I read Bridget Jones' Baby as well as the other 3. So I read all 4 of them since the beginning of the year. So that was, I can see them down here actually. So Bridget Jones' Baby, Mad About the Boy, The Edge of Reason, and Bridget Jones' Diary. So it's 4. And yeah, I really enjoyed them. They're really light reading. They didn't take me long to read. I just read them in my downtime, like in the bath or just before I was going to bed. I'd really, really recommend them if you just want a light read that's kind of comedic but also completely relatable as well. So again, as I said, I've got my 100 books poster and I'm pointing because it's over there. But there are some kids books on there, and one of them was the collection of the stories of Winnie the Pooh, which I actually had at home. So when I went home for the People's Vote March back in March, I picked that up and read all of them. I don't know, it was kind of cute to read, you know, stories from the childhood. So that was like the collection book. It has like a blue cover. I don't know if anyone's read it, but yeah, I'm counting that as well because it is something that I read. Like, it took me a little while to read. Not a little while, like it was a kid's book, but it took me like an hour. Again, it's got Bridget. I'm gonna skip the other Bridget Jones ones now because I've told you I've read all 4. Again, from my 100 books thing, I read The Great Gatsby, which I had never read before. It wasn't at all what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't that, and I actually watched it with my boyfriend the other day. Film was good as a film. In comparison to the book, it was atrocious. I did not like certain people they'd picked to play certain characters, and the filming was a little bit too modern for me in the time that it was set, but it was a good film. But I think I preferred the book. Another book I read was P.S. I Still Love You, which is the sequel to All the Boys I've Loved Before. If you didn't know, it's not just a Netflix movie. I watched the movie and I really enjoyed it, so I then read the first book last year. Thought I'd read the sequel this year, so that's what I did. Again, I really enjoyed that, and I think there's a third one, which I think I'm gonna buy and read actually. Except I've got loads of books I need to read at the moment because I've got my modules ready for next year, so I know what I need to read for next uni year. But yeah, that's another really light-hearted, it's a YA. I really like reading YA in like my free time, so yeah, I enjoyed that one. Again, another kids one that was off my 100 books was Matilda, which I hadn't read in years, and whilst I was reading it, my housemates who were doing a children's lit module were also reading it, so that was kind of cute. But yeah, classic children's book from Roald Dahl. Yeah, the second Bridget Jones. Now the next one is one I read for uni, and it is a book, but it's a critical analysis book. It's Reading Lena Dunham's Girls, Feminism, Post-Feminism, Authenticity and Gendered Performance in Contemporary Television, which is edited by Meredith Nash and Imelda Wheelahan. And it was a collection of essays on Lena Dunham's Girls. I read it for an essay I was doing. I read the whole of it. It was like over 200 pages of critical analysis. It was really long, but it was actually really interesting. I don't know how you'd get access to it if you don't have a university login, but yeah, if you want to know more about the critical analysis of Lena Dunham's Girls, then it was definitely a good critical analysis book. Another book I read was just, as I said, the module I was doing was called Girls, and obviously it was quite like feminist based, which I wasn't really expecting, and I don't actually know that much about. So I read a Penguin Classics book called The Suffragettes, which was just about the suffragette movement, just so I knew a little bit more about kind of like the origins of feminism. That was interesting. Another book I read was a creative writing kind of book called Plots on Plotting by Diana Kimpton, and it just had different tips. Basically all the chapters were aimed at different aspects of creative writing, so that was really interesting because creative writing is something I'm interested in, but as a joint honours student I'm not allowed to take any other creative writing courses here at Cardiff, so I kind of try and read stuff about it in my spare time to kind of keep my brain working on it, because I did do a short course 2 years ago on creative writing, so I just try and keep that kind of active. Now the next ones are all ones I've done for my degree, so I read Persepolis, The Story of a Childhood and The Story of Return, which turns out that's actually 2 books, technically, but they're in the same thing, but I didn't realise, and I didn't actually need to read both of them. But it's a comic novel, a graphic novel. I wasn't a fan. I really don't like comics. Also it was about a serious topic. It was about a woman. She was telling the story of her childhood as an Iranian refugee, and I just think that I would have enjoyed and learned more had it been written as a book or an autobiography rather than being a comic strip. I just think that the comic strip detracts from the serious nature of what she was talking about. I had to read a different comic novel for English this year as well, and I'm just not a fan of the genre. No offence if you are, I just don't relate to it at all. I like to read words, I relate to words. It's the same with, I've always questioned why I didn't like music without words, and then it occurred to me the other day that the reason I don't like it is because I enjoy music through the words. Like I'm enjoying it through the lyrics rather than necessarily the actual technical music part behind it. I just don't see the point of music without words. It doesn't tell a story to me. I need words to be able to understand a story. The next book I read, well, I actually reread it, but I'm still counting it because I did physically read it this year. It's Not That Kind of Girl by Lena Dunham, which I was reading for my English module. I read it before, I really liked it. I know that it received a lot of backlash and no one in my English class liked it, but I personally disagree, and I think that people are just a little bit too sensitive and try and find something wrong with everything. I just think it's unnecessary. I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was humorous. I would recommend it. The next book was a book called Lara by Bernardine Evaristo. Again, one I read for English. It's poetry in verse, so it's a story, a novel basically, a short novel told through poetry. And again, the subject was really interesting. It was about her, the girl who's the outcome of the book. It's hard to explain if you haven't read it, but like the outcome of the book is mixed race from a lot of different countries, different European countries. I can't remember exactly which countries, but yeah, she's a mixture of basically the whole globe, and it tells the story of basically all of her ancestors and how they met and how they got to the same place, and basically the story of how she was created as a person, which in itself is fascinating. But in poetry, don't get me wrong, I like poetry, but it's not in verse. I like things to be straightforward and laid out straightforwardly. So again, I don't necessarily think I'd recommend it, and I don't think, unless I had to do it for uni, that I'd read a poetry and verse book again. It just didn't really click with me. And then yeah, the last one that I've got on there is the first Bridget Jones. So that's the 15 books I've read so far. Let me know if you've read any of those books yourself, and if you enjoyed them. Let me know which books I should be reading, because I've still got 15 more to go. I'm currently reading American Psycho and The Wind in the Willows, and then I've got some books ready for my uni next year that I need to read, which are interesting ones. I've got Twilight and Lolita that I'm going to read. But yeah, let me know any books down below that you would recommend reading, and let me know how you're getting on with your Goodreads reading challenge for 2019. How many books you set yourself and where you're up to at the moment. I'd be really interested to know. And please don't forget to subscribe as well. As I said, it would mean the world to me. And if you want to drop me a message on either Instagram or Twitter with book recommendations, then my links are in the description down below. Don't forget to follow me on those as well, and I will see you in my next video.